given Saturday, right? So
That's
it's
it.
I'm not surprised. I'm upset, but I'm not surprised. You know, good for them. I'm glad.
Got it. Very good, guys. So hey, I hope everyone else is all well. So we're gonna get into this real quick. And the reason why I thought about sharing this presentation on multiple fronts, and as you can see in the below headline, help your real estate agents get more listings, help your investors get more deals, and help your investors diversify. Last week, I got a call. I was put in contact with somebody who sent me over a $303 million what's called scratch and dent or a non-performing loan portfolio. So I thought sharing this with all of you would be very beneficial, just so you can understand what goes on behind the scenes at mortgage banks, and also understanding that every mortgage bank, regardless of where it's located, faces these problems and has these looming loan issues. Some of this stuff might kind of blow your mind away if you've never seen it before. Obviously, I want you to see it and ask the questions that you have and understand the severity of it, as well as be able for you guys to all have an educated conversation with, your management team or owner of your mortgage bank or whoever you work for. Again, like you look at like a UWM, for example, I've personally never sent a deal to them because they came in, I lied actually, in 2017 when they first really came into the market. The girl that ran my pipeline at the time was sending them some deals of her own. So I guess technically I did send them some deals because of their rates and whatnot. But again, regardless of how you do business, like mistakes are always made. And I always say the more volume you do, more business you do, the more mistakes are going to be made. So in the scheme of things, $300 million sounds like a lot of business, but depending on how many loans this mortgage bank actually did, can kind of either like be a blip on their radar or an accounting error, or it could be actually a big looming problem. So we're going to get into this as well as a strategy, and then hopefully we'll do like a nice Q&A at the end, and I'll share more insight and where the earning opportunity really is. And this is for all of you as well. Again, I always say like, yeah, I do a lot of things, but they all come back to mortgages and real estate somehow, some way. So this is just another arsenal for you guys to be dangerous, and also sit down and share it with, your real estate referral partners and your potential real estate investors. So non-performing loans, this is just an example, right? So this property is located, I have thousands of properties that I get on this information. So basically, you see right here, this property is located in Louisiana. This was their loan number. It was an FHA 30-year fixed rate, 3.125%, right? So 3.125, 30-year fixed. The original loan amount was $248,000. As of today, they owe $252,340. So they're not down that much, right? But they must have missed 1, 2, maybe 3 payments. Either way, the bank can't sell this loan, right? And it was an 80 LTV. The property was 310. Again, the value was 248. It was a cash out refinance. So now the bank's like, okay, well, I have this loan on our warehouse line. What are we going to do with this? Because, obviously, if you guys know or don't know, if a borrower has what's called an EPD or early payment default, HUD doesn't insure the loan. So they basically have to make at least the first 3 payments, usually the first 6 payments, or the mortgage bank that originates the loan has to repurchase the loan. And oftentimes HUD or FHA or the secondary market comes back and figures out a way to put the responsibility solely back on the mortgage bank, which I'll show you towards the end of this. So while this particular loan is just a very, very light example, somebody would probably look to sell this debt for, even though they're owed $252,000 and there's $310,000 of equity, these current debt instruments are trading at 74 cents on the dollar. So what you do is you take, again, obviously on average, right? So some trade at full price, some trade at a discount, 50 cents on the dollar, depending on the overall loan scenario. So if you take $252,000 for an example, 252,340, and you multiply it by 74%, that means, again, based on the average of what these loans are trading at right now, you can go in and buy this debt from this mortgage bank for $186,731.60, but you're still owed $252,340. Now you're going to say, wow, like that's like a big discount. Like I could just make, $66,000 like day one. Theoretically, yes, right? Because you're owed that money. And then don't forget, there's also, $58,000 of upside from the loan balance versus what the equity is in the property based on the appraised value, right? Now, the only caveat is the rate's 3.125% and interest rates are at 6.5%, right? So there's different ways of structuring workouts and everything. So, like, would I recommend everybody going and trying to buy this, non-performing note? Probably not, for multiple reasons. One, it's Louisiana, and like I would never probably buy a loan in a state that's going to get hit with a hurricane potentially, or deal with a property that's halfway across the country from myself. Now, if you live in Louisiana, if you have multi-million dollars sitting in your bank account and you want to take this risk, this would be a healthy risk. And then we'll get into like what you do with this once you actually purchase it. But I just wanted to give you guys an example of what's called a loan tape. So this is all the information that we get when we review scratch and dent or non-performing loans. Then you have what's called reperforming loans. So let's say somebody, let's use this, prior example. Let's say they were able to come current on their debt, right? Let's say again, for argument's sake, they missed 3 payments, but they paid 3 payments. Now they're current on the loan. Now that's called a reperforming loan. Reperforming loans trade a little bit higher than obviously a defaulted loan or a scratch and dent loan, because now the people are now paying again. But based on history, usually people are repeat offenders, so there is still some risk that goes into buying a reperforming loan. Plus, obviously, the credit score drops and everything else, right? This is where I see the biggest opportunity in the market. It's called scratch and dent loans. Let's say a mortgage bank does $100 million a year of business. I'm sorry, $100 million a month of business. So 1.2 billion per year. Let's say they have, $500 million of warehouse lines to close those loans and fund them. So, $100 million a month times 3 months. They could probably have anywhere from $300 to $400 million of loans sitting on their warehouse lines, and banks borrow money to lend money, and then they sell the loan. That's obviously the name of the game, right? So a scratch and dent loan is when someone made an error somewhere along the way, or banks can't sell their loans as fast as their warehouse bank is requiring them to sell them. Most loans get sold within 30 days of closing. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes borrower miss paperwork. If you've been in the business a while, you have what are called post-closing stips, which you have to go back to the client post-closing and ask for an updated bank statement, pay stub, so on and so forth. It's a pain in the butt, yes, but you'll see why the banks have to ask for that stuff. So this is just an example. I copy and pasted some like ones to hopefully make like your eyebrows raise a little bit. This first one that somebody had, lender credit exceeded the closing costs being paid, and the borrower actually got an illegal refund, which obviously you can't have, right? So let's say, for example, the closing costs were 5,000, the lender credit was 7,000. The lender actually gave the borrower $2,000 to allocate, or maybe gave him a check for it, and HUD was like, nope, we don't like that. You didn't do this the right way. You should have reduced the lender credit to zero out the closing costs. So now the lender is stuck with this loan. This is kind of pretty crazy. If you look at the second one, claim default noted on CAVRs for Department of Education loan was not insurable at FHA due to this default. So apparently somewhere throughout the process, even though the credit report showed the loan current, they must have applied, waited 60 days to close. And, when the government went to go provide FHA insurance, they were like, wait, you're in default on your student loan. Maybe Biden told them not to pay. Cherry, you laughed there. I hope you did. We have a client that just did the same thing essentially, but it's real, right? So now again, the lender did all their job properly, except they didn't maybe pull a credit the day of closing, or maybe they didn't report in time, and now they're stuck with this loan. This third one down, which is interesting, and this happens, as we all know, like loan amounts change all the way up towards close to the day of closing, depending on escrows and all the other good stuff. Said loan required an appraisal, which was not obtained. The file was underwritten with an appraisal waiver from DU for a $272,000 loan amount. However, the loan amount at closing increased by $900, and the appraisal waiver was lost. Like now, what do you do, right? And this is where I run my consulting firm for mortgage banks to help lenders get out of these scratch and dent scenarios. Like I could personally solve this bottom issue, in a matter of seconds. And depending on if the loan was $272,000 and the mortgage bank stands to lose at minimum $27,000, I'd maybe charge them like 5 or 10 grand to just tell them exactly what to do to get this loan back on the right track and to be able to sell the loan off in the secondary market. So that's a big part of my business as well. So if you ever hear of anybody that has problems with their warehouse lines, feel free to refer them over. This next one, the APR became inaccurate on the final CD as I was not disclosed in a timely manner. As far as whether or not change of circumstance was sent for the APR change. The APR change was disclosed, but not as a change of circumstance and not within 3 days of the change. The initial CD was sent on 8/25/20, and the next CD with the APR change was sent on 9/2, plus the verification of employment was missing, right? So, and again, look, 2020, that was a while ago, right? And the auditors went back and actually made this mortgage bank repurchase the loan because of this crazy issue, basically due to risk. So that's what you have going on in the market right now. Everyone is going back and auditing all the loans being done because there's so many loans being done. People were just doing loans, selling loans, doing loans, selling loans, overlooking everything. Now they're actually going back and doing some, winter, fall cleaning. Again, another crazy thing here. Went through a Fannie Mae quality control audit. Borrower took out a new mortgage with Waldo State Bank prior to closing and didn't disclose the debt. And now they reran all the ratios. Debt ratio is 53. And that's what it is, right? So like you have people that either intentionally leave information out or just don't think they need to tell people information. With technology today and the way these loans are being looked at, like people are crazy to do things the wrong way or not just be fully transparent and disclose information because, as you can see, these are real, actual scenarios. This is actually really crazy, and I don't know if it's the title company's fault or credit. I don't know whose fault it is, but we are not in first lien position. Mortgage was closed incorrectly in the state of Iowa, and this is why most banks don't do business in every state because they don't understand state laws and regulations. Since the mortgage form did not state loan is a new money mortgage, right? A child support lien is now in first lien position and is preventing us from obtaining the final title insurance policy. So like, again, just to like throw you out there a little value, like if you did have this case pop up, you would go to your client and be like, look, I need you to pay off your child support lien, right? Or you would go and say, okay, can we do another cash out refinance and pay off the child support lien inside the refinance? Can you borrow the money from a family member? Like, let's get creative here and take that, child support out and concurrent on it. But again, these are all real scenarios. This is even crazier, right? This still goes on. So client's income is not authentic. And this is right from the auditors. Client made application claiming $11,500 month salary with new startup company, employed less than 90 days at time of application. DTRT review, I don't know what DTRT means, but review confirmed that there was no actual W-2 withholdings and no W-2 was provided to the client. So even after the loan closed, they went back to the employer and said, okay, send us, Joe Smith's W-2 for 2021. They were like, oh, sorry, we never issued it. And they were like, well, wait a second here. We had pay stubs showing $11,500. They were fake pay stubs. So again, just be careful. And we're going to start to see all this stuff shake out. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean the market has any exposure, but banks have exposure, and it obviously gives the banking and mortgage world a bad name, bad rep. Another one, undisclosed debt open prior to closing, resulting in DTI being 60%. So, like, let's say somebody was closing today at 12 o'clock, they pulled the credit report at 10 a.m., but at 11 a.m., after they pull the credit report again to check, they go to Bob's Discount Furniture and bang out a $30,000 furniture bill with debt. Now all of a sudden the loan gets sold and the new lender pulls credit, does a soft report and sees this new debt that was opened on the same day prior to closing. It's not disclosed, right? And again, like we all know that can't do a 60.78 debt ratio. So again, like be mindful when you're educating your clients and your referral sources to be very truthful and transparent, at least until after closing. So that's all I have for today's seminar. Hopefully you guys found some value in that in particular. We're going to open it up to some questions, and then what I really want to do is get your guys' take on what you saw, as well as maybe figure out where there are some opportunities to get these types of deals or action on these deals inside of your marketplace. So who wants to start?
Hey Jeff, I'll start.
Hey, what's up, man?
Reason why is like this overall topic really interests me for a couple of reasons, but I want to share kind of two main things. So I, up until over the past couple of years, I worked in operations, all the way through initial disclosures, all the way through post closing, essentially. So I saw all these different crazy one-off scenarios all the time, and I would deal with a lot of loan officers and brokers and all the such that just, number one, didn't have any idea about the, didn't understand these things can occur, and then
Sure.
didn't realize the risk associated to the lender whenever these things do occur. And my point here is that you make yourself, as a loan officer, we can make ourselves so much more valuable
Sure.
if we truly understand the impacts of these different scenarios, so that we can then become a trusted advisor for our clients, and then also work more effectively internally with our operations team members. Just a quick example: when I first started working at Princeton back in 2017, about a couple months into whenever I was working there, we got a finding from, I think it was Freddie Mac, from a loan from 2011,
Yep.
which they just randomly audited it. They found
Yep.
something and said, "Hey, listen, we don't like this. You guys have to buy this back."
And that's
So,
real. And that's real. That's a real
oh,
thing. Yeah.
it's very real. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like when, a lot of loan officers, and, I don't know if it's ignorance, I don't know if they just don't care. A lot of them just think once the loan funds and we sell it to the investor, like it's over, which that's not the case at all. So my point here again is just, the more that we can immerse ourselves in these situations, just understand them, the more that we can communicate to our clients, hey, maybe you don't take out that new credit card right before closing.
Sure.
Or hey, maybe you don't co-sign onto that student loan, or maybe that new car loan before closing. So we have to, it starts with us because we're the client facing individual. I
Sure.
really do think it starts with us to be able to have those conversations and try and do our best to mitigate the risk on the backside, because it is very, very real.
Yeah, and I think again, Josh, you bring up really good points. I think like if I said the theme of that would be, are you an invested loan officer or are you not an invested loan officer being invested in yourself, right? In your product, in your client, and in your company you're working for, or the broker you're working for, or who you're selling the loan to, right? And I think the problem, Josh, with that becomes loan officers, especially in what we're seeing now, they have this mindset that they have to close deals, they'll do whatever it takes, they'll commit fraud, they'll do stupid things, right? Put themselves, the client, the bank, everybody at risk. It's like that example you gave from like, hey, buy this loan from 2011. People don't realize like the person that originated that loan is on the hook for that loan until that loan fully gets paid off. And what's even crazier, I don't know if you know this, on an FHA loan, like let's say you originated somebody's FHA loan purchase today, and they even streamlined refinanced, right? 10 years from now. But they use the same case number because that's how obviously you streamline refinance. And something 10 years from 10 years from now, so 20 years from now, comes back that you committed fraud on the initial application. Let's say the borrower defaults or goes through a divorce or something happens, right? You're still responsible 20 years later for fraud that you committed, right? And again, not here to scare anybody, right? And I'm all for getting creative and like thinking outside the box, as you guys all know. But with technology today, and with the way the market is, and with the way obviously secondary market investors are looking at loans and scrutinizing everything under the sun, like there's no reason to take that risk, right? So the amount of fraud that you're going to see moving forward and the amount of fraud that went on 2020, 2021, think about all the people that got PPP loans that didn't disclose those on their refinances, right? Like they personally guaranteed that debt to the government if they didn't get it forgiven. Nobody I know disclosed a PPP loan ever, like never, ever, ever. And that's a problem, right? So the fallout that we're going to see, the problems that we're going to continue to see, the Ponzi schemes that we're going to continue to see shake out because of situations like this, and mortgage banks getting desperate. Now, mortgage banks, as you know, have gotten their ass kicked the first 9 months of this year, right? Everyone did. I don't care who you are. Even if you grew, you still probably lost money or breaking even at best, right? Now you get hit with a couple loan buybacks. Where are you going to get the money from? Like you're already losing money. You're already almost, thinking about like, shutting your power off 3 days a week because you want to conserve some money. Now you get hit with, hey, you owe us $300 million. It's probably not going to happen. Hey, you owe us $3 million. Hey, you owe us $300,000. Whatever it is, right? There's no person that's immune from these looming issues in the market. And somebody that takes pride in their business. I think I've shared this story and I'll share it again. I did a loan for a guy and his father who had the same name. It was Jose A and Jose E. I'm just giving an example. Jose A was the father, Jose E was the son, junior, right? And this was like 2010. I did it. It was a deal in Yonkers. It was a multifamily, both NYPD. The father just retired, so retired NYPD, current NYPD. They were both said they were moving into the property. They were both going to live in the property. I met them both in person, and then I was driving to Central Park to play softball one day. I had a restricted number call me, so I'm like, restricted, ignore. I'm like, restricted again, and I'm like, all right, who's prank calling me? And I think I've shared this story with you guys a couple times now, but reiterate it. I get a call. It's like, hi, yeah, Jeff. Is this Jeff Van Noten? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, who's this? They're like, oh, this is the Attorney General. I'm like, oh yeah, go fuck yourself. They're like, excuse me. I'm like, you're not the fucking Attorney General. Why are you calling me? Like, I don't know. You got the wrong guy here. They're like, sir, do you remember? Are you in the mortgage business? Da, 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 da. Like, do you remember Jose A and Jose E? I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, how are they? I haven't talked to them in 6 years. Like, what's going on? Is everything all right? And they were like, well, everything's okay. Just letting you know that we busted the son for burning cars, and he committed insurance fraud. He'd buy like a brand new Range Rover, drive it, and like burn it or like throw it over a bridge, collect the insurance money. He did it like 10 times. He got caught, and they nabbed him, and he never missed a payment on his mortgage ever, right? They nabbed him on occupancy fraud because when his father retired, he never actually moved into the property in Yonkers. He moved right to Puerto Rico, right? Which is crazy. Again, like they went back and they're like, again, we're the feds, right? We don't mess around with insurance fraud. While we have him on this, blowing up cars scheme, we also need to get him to like really be buried here. So they dug back all the way to check if his father actually moved into the property. And because he didn't, they said, either you take our deal or your father's going to jail. You admit you're wrong, or your father's going to prison. And he wound up taking a plea deal, So, and I give that as an example because clean deal, FHA, money in the bank, $100,000 cop, like father, $80,000 to $100,000 pension. Everything was perfect, right? And 6-7 years later, they wound up, hitting him with that. So again, like always do the right thing, because in this market, it's always going to come back to you one way or another. Anybody have anything to add? Questions, thoughts, comments, anything on that? Is anybody interested in potentially, I don't know if you're not, great. If you are, like in potentially non-performing loan note investing or scratch and dent loan investing? If you are, I can go over it briefly. If you're not, that's fine. We won't touch on it, but need to get some feedback on that. Anybody, nobody?
I actually am, maybe not specifically. I'm just interested in what that process looks like. So like, is it literally just like you and me, like end up going in on buying these non-performing loans and then figuring out where to sell them? Like, is that really how it works? Or like, I guess I never
it can
heard
be
of,
as simple as that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be as simple as that. So short answer is yes, right? The long answer is typically the way it works is like a couple people get blasted out these lists, right? And the hot deals, the hot properties, the right demographics, right? The right asset, they usually get gobbled up quickly. So you could buy anywhere from 1 to 100% of what's called the loan tape that's sent. You obviously have to provide cash proof of funds, and the biggest problem people have is, Josh, they go and they buy it, right? But then they're not in compliance with like RESPA servicing disclosures. They don't notify the borrower per the state regulations, right? They don't have the right attorneys on there. Once this happens, borrowers typically fight. They'd rather hire an attorney. They'll file bankruptcy, right? So like really understanding the true value of a loan and seeing like what you're doing with a deal makes the most amount of sense, right? So like my thing is like, I personally, right now where we're at in this market, I would never consider even buying a non-performing residential primary residence mortgage with somebody that has a rate at 3 or 4%, right? Because if you can't afford it at 3 or 4%, you can't afford it at 6.5%. Excuse me. However, excuse me, if somebody had, let's say again, $100 million and they wanted to put $100 million into the strategy, then you have different buckets, right? And that's really the way to do it. Even like $10 million, again, so you have a numbers game. So let's say $10 million got you 50 non-performing loans as of today, right? You want to probably return at minimum 15% to your investors, right? So raising $10 million, you got to pay out, $1.5 million a year. So you would go to the low hanging fruit and just figure out some way possible to help get these people to start paying something, right? Now, that's not very hard to do on $10 million of loans. Even if you got, again, for argument's sake, with the discount included and everything, somebody to pay you, 4% interest only, and then in 12 months, you're able to restructure that debt, get them current, and then sell that loan off, for example, you can make your money back plus, probably 50 to 60% on what you outlaid, right? So the problem is every deal in every state is different and unique. So like I always say, like me personally, I'd probably only look at like New Jersey, me personally, because again, it's right here. I know politicians here. I know the foreclosure system. I know all that. Whereas like New York's a little bit riskier, unless again you have an unlimited time frame, because it literally takes anywhere from like 5 to 7 years, if not longer, to foreclose in New York, right, Josh? So it's one of those things that we can go and we could buy a note tomorrow, but it's having the whole back end system set up in order to have you succeed start to finish, and then you obviously need a full team in order to organize everything.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to comment on, because I worked in servicing, and I worked in specifically like the collections area of servicing. So I have pretty good experience with how long it actually takes to go through that process. And yeah, you have to have that full infrastructure built out from the collection servicing side of it, with the disclosures and the proper time frames. There's just so much that goes into it. So, but yeah, it's interesting. I guess I never realized that there were most likely, companies or big time investors out there that actually do something like this.
Yeah, and just to give you an idea, so like obviously when COVID happened, people started to see defaults and things started to happen, forbearances, right? And I was like, oh, this is coming, right? Like this is coming. But because of all like the government bailouts and cash infusions and PPPs and EIDLs, these loans were actually trading at 102, it's called. So whatever the loan was plus 2%, because of the likeliness of like, again, earning default interest and all the other stuff. So they were trading as a regular instrument. So to hear they've gone from, 2% higher than what they were owed, now down to 74 cents on the dollar, that leads me to believe that there's a lot more turmoil coming on these. Like we're only starting to see the first of it. And again, like when I said, I don't put myself out there massively to like handle deals like this, because again, it's a lot. Like I spent all weekend reviewing the $303 million loan portfolio. It takes a lot of time, but again, if this trickled down to me this quickly, imagine how many are really out there that like the big hedge funds and everybody else are gobbling up, right? Imagine how many Wells Fargo or Bank of America actually have, whoever was even UWM, right? Like use that as an example. Like they might be big, they might have the biggest portfolio servicing, they might have done the most amount of deals, whatever. Like with that comes problems, right? And has UWM, again, not bashing them at all. I have no beef. I don't like them or dislike them. I don't know them, right? Like, have they ever faced these types of problems, right? The more business you do, the more likely you are to have problems. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind. And that's why like putting all your eggs in one basket in this type of market is just not something I would recommend.
Sorry, I got one more. Sorry, I feel like I'm taking over the
Hey,
Q&A.
that's fine. As long as somebody talks, I'm good.
Yeah. So all those examples that you shared, I was laughing because I've seen pretty much all of those as well.
Sure.
And a lot of them from my experiences, for example, let's use the appraisal waiver one. Ends up they didn't have an appraisal waiver, so loan now needs an appraiser. So what we have done in the past is we do like an in-house refinance. So someone would just refinance that loan in-house, obviously get the appraisal, make sure everything is good to go. Maybe on the more difficult ones with DTI, same thing, do an in-house refi, maybe you add someone to the loan, make sure it qualifies, and then you is that pretty much like mainly the solutions that you come up with, or are there more creative?
Like everyone's different, and again, like that's why I got, before I even look at like a loan that I'm interested in, I would always go look at the scenario of what went wrong, and I say like, can I cure this? Because if I can, then I'm money in the bank, right? If I can't cure it, like one of the things that I didn't even post, I couldn't find the comments. There was like literally thousands of loans. It said borrower faked his father's identity, and it turns out the father had been deceased over 10 years ago, right? And like when I say like that blows my mind, right? It's like, okay, who fucked up? Like did the title company? Like did the closer? Like who? Like I'm confused here, because you're supposed to ask for, obviously, hey, the notary has to ask for a driver license, right? Like,
Right.
hey, Josh, Teddy, can you please send me, like, show me your driver's license, even if you're closing virtually, right? And if it's like, okay, hey, man, you look like you're 40. It says in your application you were born in 1935, right? So, you know, that's just what worries me about the market. Like all the Fugazi title companies and people out there that just do things the wrong way, desperate to close deals. I don't know if you saw recently, Josh, Lakeland Bank here in New Jersey just got hit with like a $13 million fine for like redlining, not lending in Newark, New Jersey. I
Oh,
believe
wow.
it was a political attack issue for the guy to try and get reelected. Now, I'm not saying I'm not saying that they were like right in what they did, right? Like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
wrong is wrong, like no one gets hit with a $13 million fine. But my argument is every bank does that, right? So like, are you just making an example out of Lakeland Bank because of some beef or some maybe they didn't donate to your political whatever it is, right? I'm just giving that as an example.
Yeah.
And again, so what does that do? Less lenders that lend in a market leaves more room for people to have to commit fraud to get deals done, right? So like, I kind of blame everybody that's involved in it, but a situation where like somebody fakes their father's identity that had been dead for 10 years, like I don't care what anybody says, that should never happen,
Right.
you know?
Right. It's wild.
But I do look at all scenarios on like why and where the issue is. And I think again, I think the opportunity again, if anyone was interested, like having a part of a consulting firm to go and help these loans become unindemnified or refinance out or create a structure rather than these banks, again, like for argument's sake, on a $300 million portfolio, if they have to sell it 25% discounted, they'll take a $75 million loss, right? Now, again, if you have $300 million, you buy that and you make $75 million day one theoretically, right? So
Yeah.
it's
Right.
all about scale and like time. For me personally, I'm just more interested in watching the data and seeing what the errors are. So then that way I can obviously be more educated and help, the rest of the market and like, bring more value to these calls. So that's what we're working on. But if anyone wants more information, the guys that sent me the tape actually have a full course on like note buying, note investing, full gamut. I did think about maybe like raising some money just to like do like a small portfolio, but then I'm looking at like the headaches and the logistics and the legality of it. It's probably going to be more work than it is going to be a reward. But again, we'll see how steep these discounts go, and we'll see if the right capital sources come to the table, that want to explore this opportunity. Does anybody else have anything before we hop off this call here? Any other questions, thoughts, concerns? Mark Lawrence, what do you do in that event where you miss a child support judgment or somebody does something wrong in another state? What happens in that regard?
He could have a title claim actually if it was should have been picked up. Um, um, you look at your title policy, you put your title insurance company on notice if something was missed. Other than that, you try to resolve it,
Sure.
try to work it out. The worst thing to do, obviously, is ignore it. I mean,
Yeah.
some people roll the dice and hope that nobody picks it up or nobody goes after because they got so many other issues and problems. There's,
Sure.
I guess that's one way people deal with things is, stick your head in the sand.
Yeah.
But I think you get out ahead of it. You stand a better chance of negotiating something that's reasonable for everybody.
Where do you see the most amount of attempted fraud on your side of the business? Like, are you seeing fake sellers, fake buyers, like, people signing for people that aren't really there? Like, what are you seeing or what have you seen over your career from the legal side all the way down to the title side?
I mean, definitely the last couple of years, the wire fraud is the scariest thing that I would have to say we see. I mean, I've seen smart people, smart lawyers, duped, by phishing scams. So be very careful with your
So that's
email.
real. That's actually real. Like you actually.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some clients actually, the buyers or borrowers been sent emails, saying, please wire the money here. If people, we have procedures in place, we double or at least double, sometimes triple verify before sending any wires. Check into, don't use the phone number that they send you in the email.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're very sophisticated, especially we saw a lot of it during COVID.
Sure.
When people say, it's China, it's Russia. I don't know where it's coming from. I'm no expert in that, but it's getting more and more sophisticated. So just, as we rely on technology, to carry the process of transacting, loan deals, home purchases, with that, becomes less personal connections and more reliance on the technology. You have to have procedures in place and you have to be careful. I'd say that's the biggest place. I mean, certain places in the country, there's a lot of, there's deed fraud. Florida is rampant with it, and not
Sure.
surprisingly, not in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale. It's in some of the, smaller counties.
In the Everglades.
In the Everglades, exactly. You expect things to happen in New York City, and but a lot of times
Philly, yeah.
is in the smaller counties and locations. I don't want to make a statement that people are less sophisticated, but maybe people are more trusting of people.
Sure.
Just the nature of that. So I mean, as professionals, I think it's our incumbent upon us to, keep our clients informed, work with them to make sure that they don't get in those situations. I mean, I've seen closings, with the wire fraud where, somebody wired, $300,000-400,000, actually a lot of times do Fridays. That's on Fridays is when they have the most wire frauds, because the FBI, and actually we have a direct number to the FBI Financial Crimes Unit, and they can club back a wire within about 24 hours. But if you send it out on Friday,
Can't.
Monday morning when somebody comes to work and discovers it, the 48 hours is gone. So there's a lot of the criminals know that. We were lucky once on one where the money went to Bank of America, and before it went out, probably wherever the hell, and only a small part of it went. So Bank of America was able to freeze, I think, 300 of the 500,000. So 2 did go out. So there was subsequent wires. Hopefully Bank of America collected some decent information to pursue the criminals. But I mean, there's probably thousands of people that work in the FBI and financial crimes, in addition to every local, police.
We had a deal years ago. I'm talking like, I don't think it was it might have been like 2008, 2009 range, because I was very new in the business, and a loan officer at my bank had closed a cash out refinance FHA on a deal in New Jersey. And I don't know if you know this or don't know this, but like, let's say I'm trying to refinance my property, right? And I give Mark Lawrence my title order, again, for example, right? And I give ABC Bank my cash out refinance FHA. But I have a simultaneous application running conventional with Lakeland Bank, right? There's no way of knowing. We can close both of those deals same day within an hour apart. And basically, as you know, whoever gets the title insurance recorded first, right? Correct? I think that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
So what had happened was, and I don't even know how this happened, but again, technology wasn't that great in 08 and 09, as you know. The borrower actually got 2 FHA loans with 2 different case numbers on the same property. Somebody pulled a fast one, closed the deal on the same day. When the money was wired, the escrow company was in cahoots with the attorney and the borrower, so they paid off one of the loans, right? But the other loan went into their pocket and never got recorded, something along those lines like that. So now basically they took out $350,000 from 2 separate banks. Only one loan got recorded, and the other 350 was gone.
Yeah.
And again, like when you hear crazy stories like that, it's crazy that still is able to happen in today's day and age. But don't put it past anybody that is in a desperate situation to not think of a creative way to facilitate some type of fraud.
Yeah, no,
But usually it's people that are I hate to say it's people that are in cahoots, and it happens everywhere from like the most urban areas all the way to like the most affluent areas. Funny story. Remember, I was doing that $30 million Texas deal I had told you about?
Yeah.
They had bankruptcy issues, whatever, whole 9 yards. I just got a text yesterday. The guy just got indicted for 20 years.
Wow.
And we were 1 day away from closing the deal, and our counsel on the deal picked up that the bankruptcy overlap. So basically, when you have 14 days to challenge a bankruptcy, right? And the drop dead date, as per the bankruptcy paperwork, again, as an example, was May 30th, but the expiration date wasn't until June 1st, right? So we couldn't have closed, we couldn't have gotten clear title, because obviously the bankruptcy wasn't going to be cleared. Someone could still dispute it up to midnight. So
Right.
God blessed us with, okay, like the last thing I ever want to do is a deal where that happens, let alone a $30 million deal with new investors. But
Right.
like literally it just happened yesterday and it took 4 months to shake out and the guy's facing 20 years in prison. Our borrower.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually had a situation, somebody I knew personally, he owned a lot of property, a lot in Jersey actually too. And he was involved in and in cahoots with a law firm actually. Fake payoff letters were sent to us. It was a major case actually, and he's I think he's about to he was sentenced. I mean, he stole close to $100 million. I mean, he was actually at one point in time, hate to say, a personal friend of mine. That's how I started
Yeah,
doing
but you know what,
right.
people are bad
Fortunately,
business
listen,
people,
I know friends of his that invested with him, and
yeah.
he was essentially running a Ponzi scheme, and he actually used to say, my father's was the chairman of a major bank. He's like, why would I ever do this? Of course, those are the guys, that when they say, why would I ever, red light, red light should go on saying,
Sure.
But yeah, it's that's definitely one of the biggest things to scare people in this business now is being defrauded, and obviously you're dealing with lots of money, and got to be more than careful. Don't think you're because you're getting it done the quick way, that will come back and bite you, or the easy way. There's no easy ways.
Awesome, guys. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. Hope you guys learned a little bit. Hope we have a little bit of insight what's going on in the market. And we'll see you guys all next Wednesday. Have a good week.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff.
Bye, guys.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.